everybody, it's Rhiannon here at Model Domestic Church. I wanted to do a review video today on a book that I just finished listening to called Counting the Cost by Jill Duggar and Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband Dereck Dillard. It was really good, and a friend of mine actually listened to it first and she was telling me about it, and I was kind of worried about a couple of things because I didn't want to have any trigger stuff, and I didn't want to have whenever I read a book of an adult child from a family talking about this or that, sometimes I get really sensitive because I feel like it just heightens any possible mistakes I might make now as a parent. And anyway, but she was like, I think you'd really enjoy it. And so I thought I would go ahead and listen to it, and then I wanted to do a review on here. So before I start that, I did want to say that when the Duggars first came out with 14 Kids and Counting, I was like an instant fan. I wanted to live like that so bad. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, I want to have a big family. We had no children at the time. And I was like, I want to be like Michelle Duggar. And so I went to go visit a Sam's Club, and I walked through the Sam's Club, and I was like envisioning all the big, this is so funny, but this is just what I did, all of the big meals that I would make, and buying, stocking up on things, making big meals. And so I decided I'm going to join the Sam's Club, even though literally we had no children. So I started shopping at the Sam's Club, and I would get not the Sam's Club, but Sam's Club. And I would go ahead and buy all this stuff in bulk and put it in our cabinets. And I think my husband was like, what are you doing? It's just us. What are you going to do with all of this? And I'm like, no. It was like, I was trying to envision my dream and let it come to pass. And at that point, I think that I'm trying to remember the timeline. So it was in 2004. Yeah, 2004. I was going to say 14. 2004. And that was the year that my husband and I got married civilly. So I had not come into the Catholic Church yet. I was searching. I would read my Bible almost daily. I wore a cross around my neck. I was really trying to be a Christian woman, but I knew very little. And I was trying to find a home church. And I was kind of visiting a lot of different home churches, and I had been raised Christian Zionist, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And I wanted something that was really Christian and following Christ. And so that was kind of where I was. And I remember I was looking at this laptop, and I think at that point we must have had it on TV, and they didn't have DVDs yet. So I would watch it sometimes, and I would try to look up anything about them I could find. And I was just so enamored with their lifestyle. And I had just come out of 10 years of my life just being a lot lower. I just had a lot of hard stuff that had happened in my teen years, and I just was looking for something like Fiddler on the Roof, like law and restriction and things. I mean, I didn't think restriction, but things that would just give a clear guidelines of how to live a safe and moral life, and looked Christian. Because at one point I almost became Muslim because a little bit after that, because the woman was wearing hijab, and I was her covering and everything. And I was she's really living her faith. So I was looking for people in my life that were really living their Christian faith from at least an external view, and hopefully the heart, but just, And so when I saw 14 Kids and Counting, I was over the moon. I was so excited. And I watched every single thing that they put out, and I took mental note, and I wanted to be like her, Michelle Duggar. I wanted any children I had to be able to grow up like them. And I remember all of the hate started coming out about them, and I was so confused how anybody could think anything negative about this family. They were just, it was so wholesome and good, and I loved it. So fast forward, we were living in Texas, and it was in 2016, and I think that's when the whole scandal, the first big scandal came out, and it rocked my world. And it was around the same time that a family that we knew in an old city we used to live in, this awful stuff came out about what the father was doing in the home. And it just shattered my idea that everything could be perfect based on what you do. Even though I'm not saying I learned that in my Christian walk, it's just something I started to think. And then after 2016, my father passed away, and I had some really hard things happen, and I just got really depressed. And I know it's just a show. The Duggars were just on a show, but for me, they were a huge part of my walk as a Christian woman. So when the scandal broke, it just broke my heart. and I didn't really know how to think about it. And I really tried to avoid gossip or like any of that slanderous stuff because, it's like not true. I would try to follow sometimes like court case stuff or just like the family life, like the girls with Counting On. I try to follow some of that, but not as much as I did in the early years. So when my friend mentioned this book, I thought, I don't even know if I want to open up, like, I felt like it was a wound, like, for me, it sounds so silly, because I loved everything they stood for so much, and then I was so confused. So anyway, that was like 5 minutes of explaining the backstory. But when I finally got the book and I started listening to it, I literally listened to it probably in like 2 days. I would have done it in 1 day, but we had this big thing we had to go to. I really, really liked this book. I felt like Jill did a very good job, really explaining things in a very simple way. She did her own, like she read it herself, and I thought she did a great job. And I was so moved by her process of like trying to figure out like how she actually felt about things and getting help and all the things that she did to kind of recover from what she needed to recover from. And she was very honest, but she was also like, she spoke well of especially her mother, and definitely a lot of things about her father. And she was just very honest and truthful. And even like when she talked about the time where she was having like her children and what she went through, it was so relatable because, even if you don't go through the same thing one woman goes through, just having babies, there's something relatable about that whole process. And so all in all, I would say the book was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And then my friend that recommended it, we're actually starting like a little book club together, and we're going to listen to Ginger's book, Becoming Free Indeed. So I just got that on Audible, and we're going to start listening to it today. I started it this morning. We're going to start listening to it today, and then we're going to read this book together in the sense that we'll read a certain portion and then we'll discuss it. And I'm really excited about it. Already I can tell very different between Jill and Ginger. Obviously they're two different people, but they're just the way that they're doing, they've written the book, how they're sharing is very interesting. Jill was more like her life and then kind of recovery and trying to piece things back together. And so far what I can tell, Ginger's book is really about like her faith walk, and she talks about disentangling. But I'll make a different video probably for that book when I finish it. But all in all, I'd recommend this book. I don't think it had too many trigger things, at least, not for me. And whenever she did share something that was kind of heavy, the way she described it was, like I said, so relatable and like in such a simple, like not simple, but like easy to understand way that when you're listening, you're like, yeah, I feel what you're saying. And then for me personally, it brought a lot of healing because I realized how much I had not let, but I'll just say let the show affect my being a wife and mother, and how much of the kind of doctrines of the stuff that they believed in affected me too. I wore, only dresses and skirts for a long time. I had very long hair for a long time. Modesty was like almost to the point where it was like too much probably for me and in my household. And luckily and thankfully, I'm so thankful the Lord gave me the grace, but I never forced my daughter to head cover or to wear dresses or skirts. I would encourage her if she wanted to, and I'd buy her things, but I never made her. And over the years, without getting too personal, I have had deeper conversations with my sons and my daughter, and then one day my younger daughter, just about the human person and what really matters and the heart. And there's just so much goodness that I've found personally in Catholic Church teaching, not maybe necessarily the Catholic on the street or someone talking about it, but the actual Catholic Church teaching. I found so much help with human dignity and understanding of true modesty. There are many resources that I could list here, and I can think of one, but John Paul II's Theology of the Body was wonderful. Christopher West did make a book based on Theology of the Body. I have a lot of friends who are not big fans of that book. I appreciated it. I thought it was a really helpful, like, bullet point kind of a book, but the actual Theology of the Body, it's like huge. It's a whole bunch of talks that St. John Paul the Great wrote or spoke, and they wrote it all down. But that is a great resource if people are wanting to understand truly about human dignity and the body, and beyond just the modesty conversations, like the actual what truly matters. And but yeah, so the book was great. I'm not giving too many details about the book because I don't think that's right. I feel like that should be something that people get from actually reading the book. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on it, and I wanted to share my backstory of how I first came to hear the Duggars and how much it just meant so much, to the point where it was maybe too much, and then I had to, back away, and then recognize in the end that they are people just like we are people. And there are all kinds of groups out there, not necessarily the Duggars, but the group that Jill talks a lot about, that they were a big part of. There are all kinds of, groups or cults or organizations or whatever you want to call them out there that, have certain ideologies and things like that, that people, I think they feel safe with I'll speak for myself. I felt safer feeling like if I had these rules and ideologies and things like that, that I could be safe and I could be okay. But, Christ is after our heart. He wants our heart. And if you have not come to Christ, and if you're searching for Christ, I would highly recommend you getting a Bible and learning about who Jesus is. And if you're called to the Catholic Church, I would recommend you going to speak with a priest. And if for some reason, you're not, I'd encourage you to find a home church and just, accept Christ into your heart and know him and grow with him and read your Bible and just put your hands on material that's all about the heart of Christ. So yeah, but anyway, so I just wanted to share this video about my book review of Counting the Cost by Jill Dillard and Dereck Dillard. And if you guys are new here to this channel, I'd love for you to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, and tell me in the comments below if you also maybe were interested in Duggars at one point. Only kind comments. Please feel free to share your opinions as long as they're kind. I will delete comments that are yucky or gossipy or anything like that. So I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I'll talk to you later. God bless.